Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Aruba Instant On. Today's host is our good friend, Reggie Johnson, and he is their channel systems engineer, and he'll be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and Reggie will be able to answer them at the end of today's presentation. Reggie, thank you so much for being with Microcom today. We're very happy to have you. Very looking forward to what you have to share with us. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on over.
Great. Thanks a lot, Julie. Appreciate that wonderful introduction you give, as always. Hello, everybody. As Julie said, I'm Reggie Johnson. I'm a channel systems engineer with Aruba. I know I've talked to you guys about the Aruba Instant On product portfolio before. Today I'm going to talk about some of my newest additions to the Instant On portfolio. And I also kind of, rehash some of the things that I've pointed out in the past related to the actual portfolio itself. It's just a refresher, right, for actually what some of the products are and such, and where these products actually fit. So for the agenda, first of all, I'll start off by covering a little bit of a market overview, just talking about some of our positioning in the marketplace with this product, as well as some of the trends of the marketplace. I'll talk about a new switch that we've got. I think I actually talked about it last time. It's a 2.5 gig or multi-gig or smart rate, depending upon whatever you want to call it, type of product that actually fits into the Instant On product line. And I'll talk about some of those features. But in addition to that, I'm going to talk about our new AP22D. Now, I've talked about the AP22, the traditional AP22 and the AP25 before. Today, I'm going to talk about the 22D and explain to you what it is, what it does, and where it actually fits in the portfolio as well. And then I'll cover some basic stuff on warranty. Probably not going to touch on promotions. That's really not relevant for you guys today. But we'll get into the Q&A afterwards. So I just wanted to point out before we get rolling into this that, I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Computer Reseller News. And for the last 5 out of 6 years, we have been the annual report card winner in the SMB networking space. And you can see the categories that we've come in first place in. Within that particular heading, such as product innovation, product quality and reliability, as well as technical innovation, partnership, managed services capability, and quality of field management. So we have been a winner 5 of the last 6 years, and that's really had a lot to do with this Instant On product portfolio. And I think you guys will see we've continued to enhance and grow this portfolio really over the last about 5 years now, to turn it into, to basically make it into what it is today. So let's talk a little bit about some of the small business trends in the market overview. If you look at some of the small business trends, and some of this I've actually mentioned before, 79% of the SMBs agree that the right tech solutions can help improve their business, particularly in uncertain times. I think that's really referencing things like the pandemic. If you kind of go back to that time frame shortly after that, really a lot of small businesses actually were able to benefit in some way by the way they were able to continue to conduct business, and having solid products like the Aruba Instant On product kind of helped them through some of that. The next thing is 69% are likely to purchase some type of cloud solution when they're purchasing new software and hardware, right? So they're looking for some type of cloud solution. Everybody's become pretty comfortable with the cloud. This is 30% of the SMBs are prioritizing financial management or subscriptions. A lot of times with a lot of these smaller customers, like in that Instant On space where we've got a product that scales, we target toward that less than 100 user space, but really what we found is we've grown this product line as we kind of scale into the 250 to 500 user space. And even in some of those large numbers of clients, a lot of those customers don't like to have subscription fees. And the nice thing about Aruba Instant On is there are no subscriptions with Aruba Instant On, right? So And then 42% are purchasing things such as laptops and desktops, outside the traditional refresh cycle because there's kind of a demand in the marketplace for more throughput and better tech, faster tech, et cetera. And so we're being kind of forced really to also upgrade networks as well in order to accommodate these types of products. So if you look at our small business wired portfolio, right, our switching portfolio, down on the lower end, we've got our 1430 switch. I've talked to you guys about that in the past, just a gigabit switch. All gigabit ports, they're fanless. This is a basic unmanaged switch. It's not cloud manageable, right? And then as we move on up, we've got the 1830, which is our basic layer 2 managed switch with all 1 gig ports and 1 gig uplinks. And then if somebody happens to need 10 gig uplinks and a little smarter switch, we got the 1930. And that's really kind of our flagship product that we typically lead with. I kind of start there, and then I recommend if customer doesn't need as much of a switch, I recommend them down to the 1830. Or if they feel like they need a little something more, like perhaps a switch that's stackable, right, then the 1960 is going to be a better fit. Now, as you see, the 1960 has all the features of the 1930, and in addition to that, support for PoE Plus and PoE Plus Plus or 802.3 AT, which is a 60-watt standard. And we've actually got a 10 gig model in that, as well as 1 gig with 10 gig uplinks, similar to the 1930. But these are stackable, right? Now, what we did within the 1960 line is we added a new multi-gig model. We did not have support for 2.5 gig. Now, some of you probably remember me talking about our access points earlier. And at one point, we came out with the Wi-Fi 6 APs that had 2.5 gig ports on them. But at the time, we didn't have any switches that supported 2.5 gig, right? So now we actually do, and adding this new model to the 1960 line. And keep in mind that you could have 1830s or 1930s, and you could still plug this switch into those environments, even though those are primarily 1 gig environments. And you'll see as I talk about this, it also has 10 gig connections on it too. So it could maybe connect to a 1930 via a 10 gig connection. But this gives us more flexibility within the product portfolio to support some of the faster Wi-Fi products that we've now come up with. So that kind of gets into why does 2.5 gig matter. So I've been talking about Wi-Fi 6. I know Wi-Fi 6E is out there, not yet really a product available in the SMB space today, but definitely from an enterprise level. Eventually, at some point, we're going to see Wi-Fi 7. And if there continues to be more of a demand for these technologies, obviously there's also more of a demand for throughput, right? You got more clients connecting. The actual pipe that they're connecting through from these access points needs to be bigger in order to accommodate the additional throughput capabilities. So if we look at the 2.5 gig ports overview on this particular switch, we kind of talked about where they fit. We talked about Wi-Fi 6. Well, I mentioned workstations earlier. A lot of the newer workstations now have 2.5 gig NICs on them, in some cases even a little faster, 5 gig or 10 gig. So to be able to support that is possibly a need as well. And then there's the need for additional power, which the nice thing about the 1960 is it supports that 60-watt standard, as I mentioned, so I'm able to power things such as some of the advanced lighting and the security cameras and such. So with Class 6 PoE. So why do customers actually need it? Well, for all the reasons I talked about, the additional throughput requirements, all these new devices. And if you look at some of the key features on this particular product, it can be cloud managed or locally managed. From a stacking standpoint, it'll stack with the other products in the 1960 line. It also has 10 gigabit uplink ports. The first 4 ports over on the left, as you can see here, are actually the 2.5 gig ports, and they also support that 60-watt standard for power that I talked about. So those 4 ports. And then you've got an additional 8 ports here that are gigabit ports right, to support gigabit connectivity. And then you've got 10 gig copper ports, and then you've got 10 gig fiber port options as well. So they're transceivers that can go in there and actually make those 10 gig fiber connections. One of the cool things about the 1960 line, I should say, actually not just the 1960s, other products within the Instant On portfolio as well, is that while we support something called a luggage tag. So it's just a little tag that's on the front of the switch. It's actually on the left side that you actually can't see because they cut this in half. But it allows you to just pull it out to have a QR code that has a serial number and the part number of that particular device there. So if you ever have a need to call in support, remember these are stackable. And if they're in a rack where it's not convenient to go around to the back of the rack to have all the information, you can actually pull out this luggage tag and all that information resides there on that luggage tag, which is really nice. With this particular switch as well within the portfolio, because it's such a low port count, it also has a fanless design, right? But for those scenarios where perhaps somebody has it sitting on a desk, you know, a lot of times folks don't like to have that additional noise. So if we look at, you know, some of the things, kind of point out some of the key things I talked about. So it's a cost-effective multi-gigabit connectivity model, right, with support for up to 2.5 gig, right? We talked about the Class 4 PoE and Class 6 support on this particular switch, the 2.5 gig bandwidth. And then the fact that this one's actually stackable with the other 1960 switches. And we haven't talked about it yet, but these switches also have a limited lifetime warranty, which is actually all the switches in the Instant On product portfolio have a limited lifetime warranty. And we'll talk a little bit later about what that means and how you guys can really add to that to enhance the experience for their customers. So again, the 1960 switches, they're stackable, great product to stack with that. So these can stack up to 4 high. What you're seeing here over on the left is basically all of the switches within that portfolio. And, you know, you can do a mix and match in what we refer to as a hybrid stack. So you can stack the 10 gig with the 1 gig models with the smart rate models. You know, yes, the limitation there is up to 4 in a stack. And just by the way, these also support, I think I talked a little bit more about this last time, but these support, they can be managed via the cloud, which gives you that single point of manageability for the entire stack. We also support local stacking as well, meaning not being managed in the cloud, but being able to access the switch locally and have a stack of 4. And there's some additional benefits you get with that, such as being able to connect multiple ports off of different switches to connect to things such as servers or storage devices in a distributed link aggregation support type of way. Now, you don't have that same benefit for stacking from a cloud stacking perspective. Basically, all that does is really give you the benefit of actually viewing those as a single device. Any redundancy, you could actually connect a couple ports off of the same switch, but you don't have the ability to do that across the stack like you do with the local stacking capability. And then I mentioned hybrid, which just means we can mix and match models from within the 1960 portfolio. Another thing to point out here is very important is we have our own transceivers for the Instant On product portfolio, right? And DAC cables as well. And these are products that have been tested. You can see the models that they've been tested with in the Instant On portfolio. And they're a tenth of the cost of our enterprise class transceiver. So a lot of time, initially, when we first launched our switches, we were literally selling our enterprise class portfolio transceivers to go with the Instant On product. The problem with that is some of those actually literally cost as much as some of the switches within the Instant On portfolio. So now we actually have these for the Instant On portfolio, 1 gig and 10 gig transceivers, as well as 1 meter and 3 meter direct attach cables as well, for perhaps providing a connection between 1960s or between 1960s and the 1930 switches. So now that we've talked about the switches, let's talk a little bit about our newest product release, which is the AP22D access point. So you can see within our product portfolio, we've got a number of different access points. We've got our indoor APs, right, which you'll see on the left, and actually even the AP22D and the 11D are actually indoor APs as well. But these, the ones on the left here are specifically don't provide any more additional functions like I'll talk about with the other product, but we've got the AP11, AP12, AP15. These were all Wi-Fi 5 or AC Wave 2 access points. Later, we came out with the AP22, which is probably our most popular model, and the AP25. That provide a little bit more scale, but these are Wi-Fi 6 access points, and they've been tested and certified with the Wi-Fi standards and operate with those types of clients. Now, the AP11D was their desktop model of the Wi-Fi 5 solution. We now, with the AP22D, this is our desktop conference room hospitality model for the Class 6 or the Wi-Fi 6 access point. So you can see here it has a very similar look to the AP11D. We'll talk a little bit about some of the additional features. It does have a 2.5 gig port on it, just like the rest of the 20 series products that we released. And then we've got an outdoor AP17 that's actually a Wi-Fi 5 product. Now, the nice thing is the AP22D, even though it's a newer product in Wi-Fi 6, can still interoperate with the environment of those other APs. So as your customers or clients are migrating from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6, this is a product that they can kind of start that migration with, or the traditional AP22 or the AP25. Right. And the only difference between the AP22 and the AP25 is the number of spatial streams supported and being able to support more clients. So the AP25 can support more clients than the AP22, just 2 spatial streams versus 4 spatial streams, right, per radio. So as we look at the some of the technical specifications of the AP22D, so it has one 2.5 gig uplink port on it, which, as I mentioned, to support the advanced number of clients that Wi-Fi 6 will allow. And then it's actually got 4 Ethernet downlink ports on it. Now, one of the unique things about this and also the 11D is in smaller environments where you've got maybe 20 users or less, this can actually act as your firewall gateway type of product, right? So, you know, for really small environments. Now, I know a lot of times customers are going to have some of your more traditional vendors already there, right, fulfilling that role, particularly in the larger environments. So then this just becomes an add-on to the network as a traditional AP. But in really small environments, this does have the ability to function as a firewall router / gateway type of product. There's also support, so I'll talk a little bit more about this on the next page, actually, so I kind of reserve that as to how it kind of can disperse the PoE. But we can do forwarding PoE off of this, just as we could with the AP11D. So if you've got devices such as VoIP phones or security cameras, etc., you know, we can forward additional power off of these devices in order to power those types of devices. There's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio, both in this access point. These are 2x2. And then it can be DC powered, right? So you can plug it into the wall, which will allow you additional PoE forwarding support, which we'll talk about. Or you can actually power it via PoE. Right, so there's flexibility there, and we'll talk about some of the benefits on the next page. These are cloud managed via our mobile app or our web-based portal, which I know a lot of you guys are familiar with. I've talked about it many times. And all of our APs have a 2-year warranty with next business day advanced hardware replacement. To start, we'll talk a little bit more about that, as I mentioned later. So if we look at the 2.5 gig and PoE features, so obviously 2.5 gig, that's pretty obvious, right? This can also We'll also support 1 gig as well. So these are auto sensing. So basically, whatever's the need is, 2.5 gig or 1 gig, depending upon what it's connected to, we have ability to support that. I mentioned us also supporting Class 6 PoE. So that is the 60 watt standard, otherwise known as 802.3 BT. If you're using that standard, right, or if you're using DC power, then that gives you 2 additional Ethernet ports that can have power forwarded to them. So with that 60 watts, we're going to use a portion of that to power the device, right? If this is plugged into the wall or connected to a switch that supports providing 60 watts of power. And then we can use those 2 additional ports that can forward PoE for something like a VoIP phone or a security camera. And now we're going to have the ability to basically provide additional power to those, additional 15 watts for each one of those ports. Now, if we only have 30 watts of power to supply to the device, then we're only going to have one 15-watt port that we can power to. So it can supply power for one phone, or perhaps one security camera that requires less than 15 watts. And then if you're only getting Class 3 power, which is 15 watts, then we're unable to forward any PoE, but you still got those additional Ethernet ports. Remember with this, as you can see in the picture, you've got 4 Ethernet ports on this access point, right? So only two of them can actually forward power, right, when you have the amount of power supplied to them to allow them to do that, but they're all able to pass data. Right, remember, these are ideal for your hospitality, conference rooms. You think about boutique hotels, you think about medical facilities or clinics. This is an ideal product to fit in that type of space. So with the Instant On Wi-Fi 6 solution, as I mentioned, that's our 20 series of products, and we talked about some of the benefits there and the requirement for 2.5 gig. Obviously Wi-Fi 6 has become pretty popular, and so I think most of you guys are aware of some of the benefits of Wi-Fi 6 in addition to supporting large, more bandwidth and more clients. But there's also, but the nice thing here is we can actually pair these. So I'm actually doing this now. I have this paired with my network. I don't have a 2.5 gig switch yet here. I do have an AP22, AP22D, and an AP25. It's basically what we're talking over right now. But I've got this paired with 1930 switches. If somebody had an environment where there were 1830 switches, or even 1960 switches, this product could actually fit there. And a lot of times, a lot of times you're in they're in environments where there's not the need for the 2.5 gig requirement, right? It's a kind of a nice to have for most customers right now. However, if there's a definite need, we've now got a new switch to support that. So, by the way, a lot of times what you'll see in networks as customers are migrating as a combination perhaps of these types of switches, and maybe they're moving to a standard of the latest and greatest, right, over time. So if we look at the Instant On brand promise, a lot of things I've talked about in the past with Instant On, we still continue the same theme of being extremely simple, with a simple setup using a mobile app or the cloud-based portal for both the switches and the access points. We've got a lot of built-in security capabilities, built-in stateful packet inspection firewall, being the ability to recognize applications within the access points and doing things like access control lists and supporting authenticating clients with a lot of the switches. Support for Wi-Fi 6 I've talked about from a performance standpoint, as well as now support for multi-gig. So for that enhanced performance that you're going to start to see as more of a request by a lot of small, medium business customers. And then there's no subscription fees, no licensing fees with Instant On, so that really helps out on the total cost of ownership. And keep in mind, this is all coming from a trusted vendor, which is Aruba, right? We worked in the networking space for over 21 years with proven innovation. You guys know I probably said this 1,000 times on these calls that this product originated from our enterprise product. We really modified the feature set from based on what we already had. So we knew it was a good, solid, reliable product already. And that's why we also have no problem backing it with a great warranty and solid support options. So and keep in mind, 2-year warranty now on the APs. For a long time, it was 1 year. It's actually been 2 years for a while, but I always like to point that out. However, on the switches, we got limited lifetime. So speaking of warranty and support options, so we've got your back with this. So with the access point, I mentioned the 2-year warranty is next business day arrival within the first 30 days from product shipment date. If somebody wants to enhance that, it can actually be true next business day arrival throughout the life if they buy our foundation care standard, right? So there's 3-year or 5-year support options that will enhance that basic warranty. And that's really what you guys should be selling on both the switches and the access points. Anytime you sell Instant On, I think you've got a 30 or 90-day window. I'm kind of drawing a blank on which one. Do it within 30 days is my recommendation to get them to upgrade to this foundation care standard. It is not a lot of cost to it at all for the additional benefit. You enhance the 24/7 phone support as well as the chat support to that time frame as well, 3 or 5 years. And then the software support's actually lifetime anyway, regardless, right, of whether or not there's an upgrade. With the switches, the same. It provides additional enhancement of all of those things, as you can see over on the right. The next business day arrival, right, as opposed to before with the switches is actually a next business day ship. So if you called in today, before a certain hour, it would still not ship out until tomorrow, right? Which if you're running a business, you want it as fast as possible if you need a replacement. With the foundation care, that's going to upgrade that to next business day arrival. And then same with the phone support and the chat support, that gets enhanced to the full 3-year or 5-year support standard. And by the way, your transceivers and DACs are also covered under that, under those warranties as well, under that foundation care standard as well when added. Basically, whatever the switch has, that's what gets applied to those products. And with that kind of sums things up there, Julie. So I'm ready for questions if you have any. Hopefully that was beneficial for everybody.
Thank you very much, Reggie. That was a wonderful presentation. Greatly enjoyed it. And yes, of course, we've got questions from the audience. Let's get started with the first one. You may have answered this partially. I'm not exactly sure, but here we go. Are there any licensing considerations or subscription-based services associated with Aruba Instant On?
You're right. I did answer that one, and I'm not going to answer it again because they should have gotten it. No, I'm kidding. No, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad, actually. I always like to reiterate that as much as necessary, actually. No, there's no subscription, no licensing fees with Instant On. That's one of the true benefits that we offer with this product set. So,
Thank
great
you so
question.
much, Reggie. Thank you again. Oh, you had me there for a second.
No, you know me better than that, Julie.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I love it. Thank you. And we're going to go on to the next question. Here we go. What support options are available for users of Aruba Instant On products? And you may have touched on that. We do know that resources from you are fantastic, but if you can touch on that, we'd like to hear about it. Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely, the 3-year and 5-year options are available, and it really just enhances exactly what you see here. I kind of went back to that page just now, Julia. I'm assuming, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so this is something that you guys can actually refer back to this slide, but it talks about what's offered from both the switches and the APs. 3-year or 5-year options. With the APs, it's actually all actually I think it's the same SKU for all of the APs, so we make it real simple there with the exact same SKU, same cost, right? The switches obviously it's going to vary depending on that specific type. So a specific type of switch. We've got obviously 8-port, 12-port, 24-port, et cetera, 48-port. So it's going to vary depending upon the switch model and the port count, et cetera.
Thank you so much for that. Here we go, Reggie. Next question. Are there any upcoming firmware updates or new features planned for Aruba Instant On switches and the AP22D?
Yeah, that's another great question. So we actually just had a firmware update to 2.9, and most of the time, maybe I'll do that on the next webinar. Most of the time, I usually add in what some of those enhancements are when those releases happen. Most of the time with Instant On, with every 3 to about 4 months, we come up with a new firmware upgrade that really allows us, really what it does, just to be honest with you guys, is it a lot of things, as I mentioned, this product comes from our enterprise product line. So a lot of times we turn a lot of things off for the SMB environment. What I've noticed over about the past year or so is because of the requirement of the SMB environment really becoming more tech savvy and more innovative and really having more of a need for this technology, that we're turning a lot more things back on, as well as providing new support for new hardware that we're adding, which is another part of that, right? As we do these updates, it also that includes support for new product that we're releasing as well. So yeah, we're continuing to do that on pretty much every 3 to 4 month basis. And if you kind of go back over time, I think I started supporting this line back in 2018 or 2019. We started on release, I think it was 1.3 or so, and now we're on 2.9. So you can kind of see how those numbers kind of agree, right? About every 3 to 4 months.
Thank you so much for that, Reggie. And yes, looking forward to talking some more about this as time goes on, and perhaps in Q1 or 2 of next year, we could, you could educate us some more about all these incredible things that keep evolving.
Absolutely.
All righty, here we go. Next question. Are there any specific integration options with third-party systems or applications?
No, not really. I mean, so there are, well, I'm saying that's not necessarily true. So we do have support for some of the advanced portal options, and I'm just trying to think of some of the vendors that are out there. Zoox, IO Labs, where they have additional portals for authenticating users and such. We do have direct integrations and partnerships with them to integrate with their product. There are actually several more that I can't. Sky Labs, I think, is another one. Purple, if some of you guys are familiar with them. As I'm saying, I don't remember them. Those names are popping up in my head now. Those are some of the few that we'll integrate with that way. We did have, Facebook logon as a part of that, but I actually think that it was just turned off actually in the last release. I need to go back and confirm that. But yeah, for that's really the only way that we'll integrate with any third party as via using their portal from a login perspective today with Instant On. Now, if you do have other, traditional switches, routers, et cetera, that function on the Ethernet standards, of course, you can plug these into those environments, but we're not going to be able to manage those third-party devices within the Aruba Instant On cloud, right? It's only Instant On products that we're able to manage in the Aruba Instant On cloud portal or using the mobile application.
Thank you so much for that, Reggie. Just a couple more questions here, if you don't mind. Let's see here. How does Aruba Instant On ensure network reliability and uptime with its switches?
Yeah, so it really just it really just has a lot to do with, as I said, really having a quality product, right? Knowing where our product came from, particularly in terms of the access points, where it originated from our enterprise line. We developed a great reputation there of having a reliable product, and then with the switches and our software and all of that, it's really just it has a lot to do with just the Aruba reputation. So that's one way we kind of ensure that, and the fact that we're willing to back it up, with the warranty that we have. And even though you can get support to enhance that, I mean, a lot of times there are some customers that are satisfied with just going with the warranty. However, I do always recommend buying support. It never hurts to get additional support, regardless, especially um, at such cost-effective prices. But it really has a lot to do with just the brand, right? And that's kind of how we ended up where we are now on the Computer Reseller News list, being a winner 5 of the last 6 years. It has a lot to do with all of that, right?
Sounds good. Thank you so much for that, Reggie. Next question. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but the question is Instant On available globally?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, we sell Instant On all over the world. Now, obviously, just like, uh, I would say, well, any other vendor, I would say, or any, you've got requirements that are a product that is specific, right, to particular countries, right? Especially when it comes to things such as access points, right? So there's something to be aware of there. But yes, it's a globally available product.
Thank you so much for that, Reggie. Last question here for you, and it touches on warranties. You've mentioned them several times, and we do understand it. But here's a question that I don't think we've asked in relation to warranties. Does one need to register the equipment in order to receive a 1-year warranty?
Well, I mean, with Instant On, that's a good question. I don't think you do. I actually need to go back and confirm that. Obviously, I don't think you do, but definitely you need to have like the PO, your PO information and all that should be obtained online. But the product, it's going to pretty much, I would think it was going to be registered from when you actually bring the product online. I mean, we can see it within the portal and know what's available. But I don't know. I'm actually going to have to follow up on that one, Julie, specifically. That's a good question.
Excellent. Sounds good. We can talk about that on the next webinar.
Okay.
Thank you, Reggie, so much for answering all of those questions. And thank you to everyone attending today's webinar. And if anyone has any further questions, of course, please contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any products mentioned and or shown here today, please be aware that we record all of our webinars so that we can upload them to our YouTube channel, and we could all view it again, go over stuff, listen to Q&A again, and help educate us even further. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Reggie. Appreciate it. Until next time, we will talk to you and learn some more about Aruba Instant On in Q1 of 2024.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome, Reggie. Have a wonderful day, everybody.